He looked at his pregnant wife across the conference table and laughed. He called her a waitress. He called her a liability. He gave her $50,000 and a used Honda and told her to go find an apartment in Queens. Then he popped champagne with his mistress. What Liam Pembroke did not know, what he could not have known because his arrogance had made him blind, was that the quiet woman in the frayed cardigan sitting across from him was not a waitress from Brooklyn. She was the hidden heir to a $12 billion empire. The bank he borrowed money from, she owned it. The building they were sitting in, she had approved the invoice for the conference table. The divorce papers, he was so desperate for her to sign, they were not her death warrant. They were his. He thought he was throwing away a burden. He was throwing away a leviathan. And the baby she was carrying, the baby he told her never to call him about, that baby was about to unlock a fortune that would make his millions look like pocket change. This is the story of a man who mocked his pregnant wife, signed away his rights to her assets, and discovered that the woman he called a nobody was the most powerful person he had ever met. This story is a reminder that silence is not weakness and patience is not surrender. The people who underestimate you the most are the ones least prepared for what you become. If you have ever been told you were not enough by someone who never bothered to see what you were really made of, drop a comment below and tell me. Would you have sent that check for $12.50, or would you have given him nothing at all? Hit that like button if this story gave you chills. And if you are new here, subscribe and ring the bell, because every week we bring you stories about the quiet ones who turned out to be the most dangerous people in the room. See you in the next one. A signature can cost you everything, or it can buy your freedom. In downtown Manhattan, on the 40th floor of a glass and steel tower that bore his name in brass letters, Liam Pembroke believed he was about to correct the biggest mistake of his life. He sat in the leather chair at the head of the conference table, spinning a Mont Blanc pen between his fingers, and he looked at the woman sitting across from him the way a man looks at a receipt he is about to throw away. She was nothing to him now. Less than nothing. She was a line item he was crossing out. The air conditioning in the conference room of Pembroke and Associates was set to 65 degrees. This was deliberate. Liam kept every meeting room at that temperature because he had read in a business psychology book that cold environments made opponents anxious, made them rush through negotiations, made them eager to sign anything just to get out of the room. It was one of his favorite tricks. He had dozens of them. He collected power moves the way other men collected watches. But Saria was not shivering. She sat perfectly still in a chair that cost more than most people's monthly rent, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes lowered to the mahogany conference table. She was wearing a cardigan that had been washed so many times the elbows had gone thin and pale. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore no makeup, no jewelry except the wedding band she would be removing in a few minutes. She was 5 months pregnant. The curve of her belly was visible beneath the cardigan, but Liam had not looked at it. He had not looked at it in weeks. He had stopped seeing her body as something that mattered to him around the same time he started seeing Vanessa's. Standing to Liam's right, positioned like a lieutenant at a general's shoulder, was Vanessa Galt. She was tall and angular, dressed in a charcoal Versace suit that fit her like it had been sewn directly onto her body. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe chignon. Her smile was the kind of smile that made people check their wallets. Vanessa was the chief financial officer of Pembroke and Associates. She was also, as of 6 months ago, the woman Liam came home to when he stopped coming home to Saria. She was brilliant with numbers, ruthless with people, and she looked at Saria the way a cat looks at a mouse it has already decided is not worth eating. Liam tossed a document across the table. It was thick, bound in a blue legal cover, and it landed in front of Saria with a heavy thud that echoed in the cold room. "Are we doing this?" Liam said. "Or are you going to sit there and cry first?" Saria did not cry. She did not look up. She placed one hand on the document and slid it closer to her, the way someone might pull a book toward them at a library. Liam leaned back in his chair and spread his arms wide, a gesture that was meant to communicate dominance, but mostly communicated that he had never been told no by anyone who mattered. "The settlement is generous, Saria. More generous than you deserve, frankly. You keep the Honda. I am giving you $50,000 in cash. That is more money than you have ever seen in your entire life. In return, you sign the NDA, you waive spousal support, and we do a complete severance of assets. That means neither of us has any claim to the other's future earnings, debts, or properties. Clean break. You go your way, I go mine." He paused for effect, glancing at Vanessa, who gave him a small, approving nod. "The company is going public next quarter," Liam continued. "Pembroke and Associates is about to be listed on the NASDAQ. The IPO will value the firm at $300 million. I cannot have a dependent dragging down my asset profile. My lawyers, my bankers, my investors, they all need to see a clean balance sheet. And frankly, Saria, you are a liability." Vanessa stepped forward, her heels clicking on the polished floor like a metronome counting down the seconds of Saria's old life. "Saria, sweetie," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with the kind of sympathy that is really just cruelty wearing a dress. "We know this is hard, but Liam has outgrown this. He needs a partner who understands the world he is building, someone who speaks the language of power. You are a wonderful person, I am sure, but you are not that person. Take the money. You will need it for diapers." Saria's hand rested on her belly. It was a small movement, almost imperceptible, but it was the first time she had moved since sitting down. She looked up. Her eyes were tired. There were shadows beneath them that spoke of sleepless nights and silent crying in bathrooms where no one could hear, but her eyes were dry, completely dry. "You think I am a leech, Liam?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost inaudible in the refrigerated air. "I think you are a waitress I made the mistake of marrying," Liam snapped. The contempt in his voice was so thick it was almost physical. "I pulled you out of that diner in Brooklyn. I gave you a house in Greenwich. I gave you a life. And what did you do? You stayed home. You got pregnant. You have no ambition, no drive, no understanding of what it takes to build something. Vanessa understands power. She understands the market. She understands me. You understand nothing." Saria was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made the room go very still. "The mezzanine loan you took from Blackwood Capital last week," Saria said. Her voice was steady, a flat monotone that carried no emotion at all. "The interest rate is prime plus 4. You use the Greenwich house as collateral. If the IPO fails, you lose the house. And if you divorce me today, the bank might call the loan early unless you have a guarantor. Have you thought about that?" The silence that followed was the kind of silence that happens when someone pulls a pin from a grenade and everyone in the room is trying to figure out where it is going to land. Liam's face changed. The smirk disappeared. His eyes narrowed. He leaned forward, and for the first time in the meeting, he looked at Saria as if she were a person rather than a piece of furniture he was donating to charity. "How the hell do you know about the Blackwood deal?" he asked. His voice was low and dangerous. "That is confidential. That is not in any public filing." "How do you know about that?" I read. Soraya said simply. You went through my briefcase, Liam said, standing up so fast his chair rolled back and hit the window. This is exactly why I'm leaving you. You are paranoid and invasive. You know nothing about high finance, Saria. You just memorized some words you saw on a piece of paper. You do not understand what they mean. Sign the divorce papers. Blackwood Capital does not care about a housewife. Soraya reached into her purse. She did not pull out a tissue. She did not pull out a phone. She pulled out a cheap ballpoint pen, the kind you get for free at a bank branch, and she uncapped it. You are right, Liam, she said softly. I do not belong in your world. I will sign. Liam exhaled. He exchanged a victorious look with Vanessa, who smiled like a woman who had just won an auction. Smart girl, Liam said. Take the 50 grand and find a nice little apartment in Queens. Maybe go back to waiting tables. It suits you. He paused, then added, as if it were an afterthought. And when that baby comes, do not call me. I will not be listed on the birth certificate. My lawyer will make sure of that. Soraya flipped to the last page of the document. The clause was bolded. Complete severance of assets. It stated that neither party would have any claim to the other's future earnings, debts, or properties acquired after the date of signing. Are you sure you want to waive all rights to my assets? Soraya asked, pausing with the pen hovering over the signature line. And I waive all rights to yours? Liam laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound that bounced off the glass walls. Your assets? Your checking account has $1,200 in it. Yes, Soraya. I waive my rights to your vast fortune. He turned to Vanessa. Can you believe this? Vanessa laughed too. It was the kind of laugh that would echo in Liam's memory for years, long after he had stopped finding anything funny. Soraya signed. The scratch of the cheap pen on the expensive paper sounded like a match being struck in a very dark room. She pushed the document back across the table. Done, she whispered. Liam snatched the papers, checked the signature, and grinned. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's cars. Finally, he said, I am free. Now get out. Vanessa and I have a celebration dinner at Les Bernardins. Security will escort you. Soraya stood up. She smoothed down her cardigan over her pregnant belly. She picked up her purse, the same worn leather purse she had carried for years. She did not look back at the man she had loved for 7 years. She did not look at the woman who had stolen him. She walked to the glass door of the conference room, and she paused with her hand on the handle. Goodbye, Liam, she said. I hope Blackwood Capital treats you well. Liam did not even look up. He was too busy uncorking the champagne. The rain hit Saria the moment she stepped through the revolving door of the Pembroke and Associates Tower and onto the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue. It was a cold rain, the kind that comes in late autumn in New York. The kind that does not fall so much as it attacks, driving sideways in gray sheets that soak through clothing in seconds. The doorman did not offer her an umbrella. He had been told she was no longer a VIP. He had been told she was no longer anything at all. Soraya stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the rain hit her face. Pedestrians hurried past, hunching under umbrellas and briefcases, not giving a second glance to the pregnant woman in the frayed cardigan who looked like she had just lost everything. And in a way, she had. She had lost her husband. She had lost the house in Greenwich. She had lost the illusion of a simple, quiet life that she had tried so hard to maintain for 7 years. She had lost the fantasy that Liam Pembroke had ever loved her for anything other than what she appeared to be, which was nothing. But appearances, as Saria Kensington knew better than anyone alive, are the most expensive lies in the world. She walked 2 blocks south, away from the building, away from the security cameras, away from the world of Pembroke and Associates. She stopped in front of a nondescript black sedan idling in a no-parking zone on a side street. It was not a sedan, actually. It was a Bentley Flying Spur, midnight black, with tinted windows so dark they were almost opaque. The license plates were registered to a shell company in Delaware that was owned by a holding company in Geneva that was owned by a trust that did not technically exist on any public record. A man in a dark suit stepped out of the driver's side immediately. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind of posture that suggested a lifetime of military service, followed by a lifetime of serving someone he respected even more than any commanding officer. He held an umbrella over Saria before a single additional drop of rain could touch her. "Mrs. Sterling," the man said, bowing his head slightly. Saria stopped walking. Something changed in her face. It was not dramatic. It was not a movie transformation with swelling music and slow-motion hair flipping. It was subtler than that, and far more frightening. The softness left her eyes, the slight hunch of her shoulders, the posture of a woman who had spent 7 years making herself small so that her husband could feel big. That posture straightened like a steel rod clicking into place. The hesitation in her voice, the quietness, the deference, all of it vanished like smoke in wind. "It is Miss Kensington now, Alfred," Saria said. Her voice was different, not louder, but harder, more precise. The voice of a woman who was done pretending. "My apologies, Miss Kensington," Alfred said, opening the rear door. "Mr. Cole is waiting for you at the private hangar. The jet is fueled for Zurich. Standing by for your instructions." Saria slid into the leather interior of the Bentley. The contrast was so sharp, it was almost violent. 30 seconds ago, she had been standing in the rain, looking like a woman who could not afford an umbrella. Now she was sitting in a car that cost more than Liam's Porsche. Pulling out a phone that was not the cracked iPhone 8 she used around Liam, but a secure satellite phone that she kept hidden in a compartment sewn into the lining of her purse. She dialed a number from memory. "Harrison," she said. The voice that answered was deep, gravelly, and carried the weight of a man who had spent 30 years in courtrooms making powerful men weep. "Saria," Harrison Cole said, "the most feared corporate litigator in New York, and the man who had been waiting for this phone call for 7 years. Did he sign?" "He signed," Saria said. She watched the rain streak against the tinted windows as Alfred pulled the Bentley smoothly into traffic. "He mocked me, Harrison. He told me to go back to waiting tables. He told me the baby did not matter. He said, I had no ambition." There was a pause on the line. Then Harrison Cole said, very quietly, "He is a fool." "He is worse than a fool," Saria replied. "He is a fool who borrowed money from his own wife and does not know it." She let that sentence hang in the air for a moment, because it was the kind of sentence that deserved its own silence. "Blackwood Capital," Harrison said. "He still has no idea?" "None," Saria confirmed. "He thinks Blackwood is just a lender. He has no idea it is a subsidiary of the Kensington Group. He borrowed $4.2 million from a bank that I control, used the house I lived in as collateral, and then he threw me out of that house. The irony is almost too perfect to be real." "What are your instructions?" Saria placed her free hand on her belly. She felt the baby move, a small flutter, like a bird testing its wings. "Activate the clause on the loan," she said. "The divorce papers are signed. The asset severance is legally binding. He waived all rights to my assets, which means he waived his protection against my companies. Foreclose on Greenwich tonight." "Tonight?" Harrison asked. "That is aggressive. He canceled my health insurance today, Harrison. I am 5 months pregnant, and he canceled my health insurance. He did not even tell me. I found out when I tried to schedule my prenatal appointment last week, and the system showed my coverage as pending termination. He was planning this for weeks. He wanted me to have nothing. So tonight, yes, take the house. And the company? The takeover? Soraya paused. This was the part that required patience, and patience was the weapon she had spent 7 years sharpening. Not yet, she said. The trust does not fully activate until Elise is born. Elise? Harrison asked. The baby, Soraya said. I am naming her Elise, after my grandfather. After Elias Kensington, Harrison said softly. The man who built half the infrastructure of the East Coast. That is a heavy name for a little girl. She will grow into it, Soraya said. But until she is born, I do not have full control of the Kensington Group. I have operational access through the shell companies, enough to trigger the Blackwood Clause and seize the house. But the full trust, the billions, the board seats, the controlling shares in the shipping lines, and the real estate portfolio and all of it, that requires the birth of my first child. My grandfather put that condition in his will. He said the Kensington fortune should only pass to someone who understood what it meant to protect something more important than money. How long after the birth? 30 days for the trust to clear probate confirmation. That is the law. So here's what we do. We take the house tonight. We let Liam panic. We let him scramble for the IPO, but we do not touch Pembroke and Associates until the trust is fully activated and I have legal control of every asset in the Kensington portfolio. We move slowly, Harrison. We move perfectly. I have waited 7 years. I can wait 4 more months. And if he fights back before then, if he figures out who you are, Soraya smiled. It was the first smile she had allowed herself in months, and it was not warm. It was the smile of a woman who had been playing chess while everyone around her thought she was doing a crossword puzzle. He will not figure it out, she said. He thinks I am in Queens crying into a pillow. That is his weakness, Harrison. Liam only sees what he wants to see. He wanted to see a waitress, so that is what he saw. He wanted to see a nobody, so that is what I gave him. He has spent 7 years looking at a billionaire and seeing a burden. He is not going to suddenly develop insight. She reached into the seat pocket and pulled out a small leather case. Inside was a makeup wipe. She scrubbed her face, removing the carefully applied look of exhaustion and neglect that she had worn to the signing. Underneath, her skin was clear and sharp. She pulled the elastic from her ponytail and let her hair fall in waves around her shoulders. She was not Saria Pembroke, the waitress Liam had saved from a life of mediocrity. She was Soraya Kensington, granddaughter of Elias Kensington, the steel and shipping magnate who had built half the ports on the eastern seaboard. When her parents died in a plane crash, when she was 19, she had inherited everything. A fortune so vast, it was managed by an army of proxies, trustees, and financial architects whose sole purpose was to keep the Kensington name out of the headlines and the Kensington money out of the hands of fortune hunters. She had met Liam 8 years ago. She had been 24, taking a break from her life, working a normal job at a diner in Brooklyn because she wanted to understand how real people lived. She wanted to know if she could be loved for who she was, not what she had. She poured coffee and scrambled eggs, and she met a young, hungry Wall Street associate who tipped well and smiled at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. She fell in love with his drive. She thought he loved her for her. She hid the money to be sure. She was sure now. He did not love her. He loved money. And he had just signed away his right to hers. Alfred, Soraya said to the driver. Yes, ma'am. Cancel Zurich for now. Take me to the apartment in Brooklyn. I need to rest. The baby has been kicking all day. Very good, ma'am. And shall I have the tailor on standby? For when you are ready? Soraya looked at her hand where her wedding ring used to be. The skin was pale, indented from 7 years of wearing a band that had never meant what she thought it meant. Yes, she said, there is a gala in Zurich in a few months. The Global Economic Summit. Liam will be there, trying to sell his IPO to anyone who will listen. I think it is time I introduce myself properly, but not yet. First we take his house, then we take his money, then we take his company, and we do it all with the document he signed today. He wanted a clean break. I am going to give him the cleanest break in the history of Wall Street. She looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline, the towers of glass and steel that Liam thought he ruled. He thinks he is a shark, she said quietly. He does not know he has been swimming with a leviathan. The champagne at Le Bernardin tasted like victory. Liam held the crystal flute up to the light, admiring the golden bubbles, the way a man admires his own reflection. Across the white tablecloth, Vanessa was radiant, flushed with triumph, already planning the next phase of their life together, now that the obstacle, as she privately referred to Saria, had been removed. We need to gut that kitchen in Greenwich, Vanessa said, slicing into a seared scallop with surgical precision. It is so domestic. I want clean lines, industrial chic, marble and steel, something that says power couple, not soccer mom. Liam reached across the table and took her hand. Do whatever you want, babe. By this time next quarter, the IPO will value the firm at $300 million. You can renovate the entire house. Hell, buy a new one. We are about to be very, very rich. Vanessa smiled, but her eyes were already doing calculations. She was always doing calculations. That was what Liam loved about her, and what he should have feared. What about the baby? Vanessa asked, her smile tightening almost imperceptibly. She is going to try to use it against you. Child support. Custody demands. That baby is a liability, Liam. My lawyer already handled it, Liam said, waving his hand dismissively. I am not listed on any prenatal records. The divorce settlement has a full asset severance. She waived spousal support. And honestly, what judge is going to give her anything? She has no income, no savings, no education beyond a GED. She was a waitress when I found her, and she will be a waitress when I am done with her. The baby is her problem now. He lifted his glass again. To freedom, he said. To power, Vanessa corrected, clinking her glass against his. Liam's phone buzzed against the white tablecloth. He frowned. It was 11:30 at night. The call was from Maria, the housekeeper at the Greenwich estate. Maria had been with the house for 15 years. She never called this late unless something was wrong. Probably calling to ask when Saria is coming back to pick up her knitting, Liam joked, answering the call on speaker so Vanessa could share the amusement. Maria, what is it? I am at dinner. The voice that came through the phone was not amused. It was shrill, trembling, barely coherent with panic. Mr. Pembroke, you have to come home, right now. There are men here, police and men in suits. They are changing the locks. They are taking things out of the house. They told me to leave. They said the bank owns the house now. The scallop on Vanessa's plate suddenly looked a lot less appetizing. Liam's hand tightened around his phone. What are you talking about? What men? What bank? They said they are from Blackwood. They have papers. They have a sheriff with them. Mr. Pembroke, they are taking your golf clubs right now. They are taking the paintings from the hallway. Liam ended the call. The color had drained from his face so quickly that he looked like a man who had just been told he had 6 months to live. It is a mistake, Vanessa said quickly, though her eyes had gone sharp and watchful. Call Blackwood. It is a clerical error. These things happen with new loans. Liam was already dialing. He had the direct number for Gary Wheeler, a vice president at Blackwood Capital who had wined and dined him just last week. Gary had taken him to a Knicks game in a private suite and told him the Blackwood loan was the beginning of a beautiful partnership. The automated message that played was not beautiful at all. The number you have dialed has been disconnected or is no longer in service. Liam stared at his phone. What the hell? He tried again. Same message. He tried the main Blackwood Capital office line. Same message. Vanessa's face had gone very still. She was no longer smiling. She was no longer planning kitchen renovations. She was doing the math, and the math was not good. We have to go, Liam said, throwing a handful of cash onto the table. Right now. The drive from Midtown Manhattan to Greenwich, Connecticut, usually took 45 minutes. Liam made it in 30. His Porsche, 911, carved through traffic on Interstate 95 like a bullet through butter, weaving between lanes, running yellows that were really reds, while Vanessa gripped the door handle and said nothing. When they turned onto the long gravel driveway of the Greenwich estate, the scene that greeted them looked like something from a movie about someone else's worst day. Two large moving trucks blocked the circular drive. A sheriff's cruiser sat near the fountain, its lights rotating in silent blue and red flashes that painted the white columns of the house in alternating colors of authority. Men in dark jumpsuits were carrying furniture out of the front door. Liam's furniture, his leather sofas, his antique desk, his collection of first edition books. Liam slammed the car door so hard the window rattled. He stormed up the front steps, his dress shoes crunching on the gravel. Hey, he shouted at a mover carrying a painting. That is a Rothko. That painting is worth $200,000. Put it down right now. The mover did not put it down. He did not even look at Liam. He carried the Rothko to the truck and slid it into a padded slot alongside the rest of Liam's former life. A man in a charcoal suit stepped forward from the shadows of the portico. He was holding a clipboard and wore an expression of professional boredom that suggested he had done this many times before and would do it many times again. His name badge read Henderson, and his title was Senior Asset Recovery Specialist. Mr. Pembroke? Henderson asked. I own this house, Liam shouted, jabbing a finger in Henderson's direction. I am the CEO of Pembroke and Associates. I am one of the most powerful men on Wall Street. Boofenbam. Get your men off my property before I sue you into a crater. Henderson did not blink. He did not flinch. He handed Liam a document with the same casual indifference a flight attendant might hand a passenger a napkin. Notice of default and immediate acceleration of payment, Henderson recited. Per the terms of your loan agreement with Blackwood Capital. Clause 14, Section B. Any significant alteration in the borrower's marital status or asset protection profile constitutes a material risk event. You signed a divorce settlement today, waiving spousal assets. That triggered the risk assessment. The bank has called the loan. Full principal, $4.2 million, payable immediately. Liam's mouth opened and closed. He looked like a fish that had just been pulled from a tank it thought was the ocean. Called the loan? I have 30 years to pay this. Not under the risk clause, Henderson corrected, his voice flat and practiced. You owe the full amount. Since you did not wire the funds by 5 p.m. today, we are seizing the collateral. The collateral is this house and its contents. This is insanity, Vanessa screamed from behind Liam, her Louboutin heels sinking into the gravel as she marched toward Henderson. We have an IPO next week. We are good for the money. This is a temporary cash flow situation. Henderson looked at Vanessa, then back at his clipboard. The lender is not interested in promises or projections, Miss Galt. They want the asset. We are changing the locks tonight. You have 10 minutes to retrieve personal items. Anything left after that becomes property of the Recovery Trust. Liam grabbed Henderson's lapel. Who is the lender? I want to speak to the owner of Blackwood Capital right now. I want a name. Henderson removed Liam's hand with a grip that was surprisingly firm. The ownership of Blackwood Capital is held by a blind trust, Henderson said. I do not have the name. I do not need the name. My orders came from the top, and the directive was very specific. What directive? Henderson looked Liam directly in the eyes for the first time. Scorch the earth. Those two words hung in the cold night air like a verdict. Liam stood there, stunned, as a mover walked past him carrying his golf bag. His custom-fitted Callaway clubs, the ones Vanessa had given him for his birthday, were being loaded into a truck like groceries. Liam, Vanessa hissed, pulling him aside. Her voice was low and urgent and very, very scared. Fix this. If the investors find out you lost your house a week before the IPO, the stock price will collapse before it even launches. We will be finished. I cannot fix it tonight, Liam snapped. We will stay at a hotel. I will call my lawyers in the morning. We will sue Blackwood for wrongful foreclosure. We cannot stay at a hotel, Vanessa whispered. Your credit cards, the corporate Amex, they are all tied to the Blackwood credit line. If they have frozen the account, then the cards are dead. Liam pulled out his wallet. He opened his phone and tried to book a room at the Greenwich Hyatt. Declined. He tried his personal Visa. Declined. He tried the backup MasterCard he kept for emergencies. Declined. He looked up at the mansion he had bragged about at every dinner party for the last 5 years. The lights were being turned off, room by room, like candles being extinguished at the end of a vigil. Within minutes, the entire house was dark. He was standing in the driveway of his own former home, in a suit that cost $5,000, with a woman who spent $300 on a single haircut, and he could not afford a motel room. And then, like a crack of lightning through the fog of his confusion, a memory hit him. A voice. Soraya's voice. Quiet and steady in that freezing conference room. The mezzanine loan from Blackwood Capital. If we divorced today, the bank might call that loan. She knew, Liam whispered. The realization was physical. He felt it in his chest, like a punch that landed after a delay. She asked me about the loan. She knew about the clause. She knew this would happen, Vanessa scoffed, but her voice trembled slightly. Soraya, please. She probably just repeated something she overheard. She does not even know what a mezzanine loan is. She is a nobody, Liam. She is a waitress from Brooklyn who got lucky when you married her. But as the rain began to fall again, soaking through Liam's bespoke suit and ruining Vanessa's silk blouse, Liam was not so sure. For the first time since the day he met Soraya Pembroke in that diner in Brooklyn, he felt a flicker of something he had not felt in years. It was not guilt. It was not regret. It was fear. Because somewhere in the back of his mind, in the part of his brain that was actually good at reading people when he bothered to use it, Liam Pembroke had the sudden, nauseating feeling that he had not been the one doing the leaving today. He had been the one who was let go. 2 days after Saria signed the divorce papers, she woke up in a studio apartment in Brooklyn that smelled like paint thinner and old radiator heat. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a walk-up building on Atlantic Avenue, the kind of building where the hallway lights flickered and the mailboxes in the lobby were dented from decades of frustration. Harrison Cole had rented it for her under a shell company name, paying 6 months in advance in cash. It was small, clean, and completely empty except for a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, and a cardboard box that served as a nightstand. This was not the life of a billionaire's granddaughter. This was the life of Soraya Pembroke, the woman on paper, the woman the world could see. And until the baby was born and the trust activated, the woman on paper was all she could afford to be. Soraya sat on the edge of the mattress, her hand on her belly. Elise was moving this morning, rolling and pushing, and Saria imagined her daughter swimming in there, testing the walls of her small world, getting ready for the bigger one. "Good morning, little girl," Saria whispered. "We have a big day today. Mama has a doctor's appointment." She got dressed slowly. Her back ached. Her feet were swollen. 5 months pregnant and living in a third-floor walk-up with no elevator was not what any obstetrician would recommend, but it was what she had. She put on the same cardigan she had worn to the divorce signing, the same worn shoes, and she walked 4 blocks to the clinic where she had been receiving prenatal care for the past 3 months. The clinic was in a medical building near Brooklyn Heights. It was a good practice, recommended by a friend years ago when Saria still had friends who knew her as a normal person. The waiting room was painted in soft pastels and filled with other pregnant women reading magazines and checking their phones. Saria signed in at the front desk and sat down. After 10 minutes, the receptionist called her name. "Mrs. Pembroke? Could you come up to the desk, please?" Saria walked to the counter. The receptionist was a young woman with kind eyes who looked deeply uncomfortable. "I am sorry, Mrs. Pembroke. I do not know how to say this, but your insurance has been terminated. We received the notification from the carrier this morning. Your coverage ended 2 days ago." Saria's hand went to her belly. "Ended?" "Yes, ma'am. It appears the policyholder canceled the plan. You were listed as a dependent on a corporate group policy through Pembroke and Associates. The policyholder removed you, effective the date of your, the receptionist glanced at her screen, the date of your divorce filing." Saria stood very still. She had known this was coming. She had expected it, even planned for it in a distant, strategic way. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it hit you in the chest while you are standing in a doctor's office with your baby moving inside, you are 2 very different things. "Without coverage," the receptionist continued, her voice gentle, "we cannot schedule the appointment. The out-of-pocket cost for prenatal care, including the ultrasound you are due for today, would be over $2,000, and the delivery itself, depending on complications, could be anywhere from $15,000 to $40,000. "I understand," Saria said. Her voice did not break, but something behind her eyes shifted. "Thank you for letting me know." She turned and walked out of the clinic. The automatic door slid open, and the cold air hit her like a wall. It was raining again. Now, if you have ever been 5 months pregnant and standing in the rain outside a doctor's office that just turned you away because the man who was supposed to love you canceled your health insurance without telling you, then you know what Saria felt in that moment. And if you have never experienced that, I want you to imagine it. Imagine carrying a life inside you, a daughter you have already named, a daughter who is already the most important thing in your universe, and being told that the system designed to keep her safe has been switched off by the man who helped create her. That is not just cruelty. That is erasure. He was not just divorcing Saria. He was trying to erase the fact that his child existed at all. Saria sat down on a bench at a bus stop. The rain soaked through her cardigan within minutes. She could feel the cold seeping into her bones, and she could feel Elise moving inside her, oblivious to the storm, trusting completely that her mother would keep her warm. She pulled out her phone, not the satellite phone, the regular one, the cracked iPhone 8. She called Harrison Cole. Harrison picked up on the first ring. "Talk to me." "He canceled my insurance," Saria said. Her voice was steady, but there was a tremor underneath it, like a bridge vibrating before it breaks. "The clinic turned me away. I have no prenatal care. When did the coverage end?" 2 days ago, the day he filed for divorce. He planned it, Harrison. He timed the cancellation to coincide with the filing. He wanted me to have nothing. No house, no money, no medical care. He wanted me to show up at that clinic and be humiliated. That son of a... Harrison started, then stopped himself. Give me 2 hours. I will set up private care through the Kensington Medical Fund. There is an OBGYN at Mount Sinai who is on retainer to the trust. I will route payment through a shell company. Liam will never see it. How long until I have full access to everything, Harrison? After Elise is born, 30 days for the trust to clear probate confirmation. Your grandfather built this lock for a reason. My grandfather, Soraya said, watching the rain puddle around her shoes, never sat in the rain pregnant and uninsured. He built that lock from a penthouse. And there was a pause. Then Harrison said, I know this is hard, Soraya. Hard? Soraya laughed, and the laugh was so raw, it startled a pigeon on the bench beside her. I am worth more than most countries, Harrison. I control shipping lanes that move 10% of the global supply chain. I approved the invoice for the conference table Liam made me sign my divorce papers on, and I am sitting on a bench in Brooklyn in the rain because I cannot see my own doctor. This is not hard, Harrison. This is absurd. It is temporary. Everything is temporary. That is what makes it dangerous. I need to stay healthy for 4 more months. I need this baby to come safely. If anything happens to Elise, the trust stays locked. Liam keeps his company. Vanessa keeps her position. They win. They win because they took away my health insurance. They are not going to win, Harrison said, and his voice had the quiet conviction of a man who had spent 3 decades making sure the wrong people never won. I will have the Mount Sinai appointment set up by this afternoon. Private room, private billing, no paper trail that connects to Kensington. In the meantime, go home, get warm, get dry. And Soraya? Yes, that baby is going to be fine. And when she is born, we are going to make Liam Pembroke wish he had never learned how to spell his own name. Soraya hung up. She sat on the bench for another minute, letting the rain fall. Then she stood up, placed both hands on her belly, and whispered to her daughter, I know this does not look like much right now, baby girl, but I promise you, one day, I am going to show you exactly what your mama is made of. She walked home in the rain. 4 blocks. No umbrella, no car, no husband, no insurance, but she was not broken. She was loading. Vanessa Galt had a rule. She never worried about women who cried. Crying women were defeated women. They were harmless. They were already beaten. The women Vanessa worried about were the ones who went quiet. Soraya had gone very quiet. It had been 3 weeks since the divorce, and Vanessa had heard nothing from her. No angry phone calls, no lawyer letters demanding more money, no sobbing voicemails at 2 in the morning. Just silence. And silence, in Vanessa's experience, either meant that someone had given up completely or that they were planning something. Vanessa was not the kind of woman who left anything to chance. She was sitting in her new office at Pembroke and Associates, which was technically Liam's old office, because Liam had been sleeping on his college friend's couch for the past 3 weeks and had not been functioning at what anyone would call a professional level. The foreclosure had rattled him. He was making phone calls 18 hours a day, trying to secure new financing for the IPO, and he was failing. No bank wanted to touch a CEO who had lost his house to a loan default. It raised questions about judgment. It raised questions about risk. Vanessa had been running the firm in his absence with Sam, which suited her perfectly. She had always been the brains of the operation. Liam was the face, the handshake, the name on the door. Vanessa was the one who actually knew where the money was, and right now, she needed to know where Sarah was. Vanessa picked up her phone and called the head of HR. Jennifer, she said, I need you to pull the archived insurance records for Sarah Pembroke. Her coverage was under the corporate group plan. The records came through in an email 20 minutes later. Vanessa scanned them with the speed and precision of a woman who had built her career on reading financial documents the way other people read novels. And there it was. Under recent claims, a prenatal blood panel, an ultrasound at 20 weeks, vitamins prescribed for pregnancy-related anemia. Soraya was pregnant. Vanessa set down her phone. She stared at the wall for a long time. The pregnancy changed everything. A baby meant potential child support claims that could survive any NDA. A baby meant a biological connection to Liam that Vanessa could never sever. A baby meant sympathetic judges and weepy juries if anything ever went to court. A baby meant the media would frame Saria as the victim and Vanessa as the villain. Most importantly, a baby meant Liam might feel guilty. And a guilty Liam was a weak Liam, and a weak Liam was useless to Vanessa. She had to neutralize this threat. Over the next 2 weeks, Vanessa executed a campaign of cruelty so methodical it would have impressed a military strategist. First, she moved into the Greenwich house. The foreclosure had been on Liam's loan, but Vanessa had convinced Blackwood's asset recovery team through a series of phone calls that blended flirtation and implied legal threats to allow her to rent the property as a caretaker until the bank found a buyer. She moved in the same day Saria moved out. She unpacked her Louis Vuitton luggage in the master bedroom that still smelled faintly of Soraya's lavender shampoo. That evening, she posted a photograph on Instagram. It showed her standing in the foyer of the Greenwich house, wearing a silk robe, holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Finally home. Heart emoji." She knew Saria's former friends would see it. She wanted them to see it. She wanted them to choose sides. Second, she found Soraya's remaining clothes in the guest room closet. Soraya had not taken everything when she left. She had taken the essentials, the things she could carry, and left behind the rest, including a soft gray maternity jacket that she had bought at a second-hand store using money she had saved from the grocery budget Liam gave her. Vanessa wore the jacket to the office the next day. She did not know its history. She did not know that Saria had found it on a sale rack and held it up to her belly in the mirror of a thrift store, smiling, imagining wearing it in her 3rd trimester. Vanessa just thought it was a decent jacket. Third, and this was the move that earned Vanessa a special place in the story we are telling, she began talking about Saria's pregnancy to anyone who would listen. She got pregnant on purpose, Vanessa told a group of associates at the office. Happy hour. It is the oldest trick in the book. Trap the man with a baby and then ride the child support gravy train for 18 years. Women like that disgust me. They use their bodies as bargaining chips. Liam was smart to get out when he did. The associates nodded, because that is what people do when the most powerful woman in the building tells them how to feel about something. Fourth, Vanessa convinced Liam to take one more step. She drafted a new life insurance beneficiary form and placed it on Liam's desk. "You need to remove Soraya from your life insurance policy," Vanessa told him. "She is no longer your wife. I should be the primary beneficiary. And the child rider, that needs to come off too. You are not acknowledging this baby. Remember? You told her you would not be on the birth certificate. If you leave the child rider on the policy, it implies paternal acknowledgement." Liam signed the form without reading it. He had been signing a lot of things without reading them lately. But Vanessa was not done. The pregnancy was still a problem. It was a ticking clock, a biological bomb that could detonate Vanessa's carefully constructed future at any moment. She needed to do something about it. Not permanently. Vanessa was not, she told herself, a monster. She just needed to apply enough pressure to make the problem go away on its own. Vanessa had a friend from college named Darcy, who lived in Brooklyn Heights. Darcy ran in the same social circles that Saria's former acquaintances inhabited. Vanessa called Darcy and casually asked if she had seen Soraya around the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, Darcy said, I saw her yesterday going into the medical building on Montague Street. She looked pregnant, Vanessa. Vanessa asked Darcy for the exact address. Then she asked Darcy what time Saria had been there. Then she thanked Darcy and told her they should get brunch soon and never called her again. The next day, Vanessa positioned herself outside the medical building on Montague Street. She was wearing dark sunglasses and a camel coat, looking like a woman who belonged everywhere and nowhere. She waited for 40 minutes. Soraya emerged from the building at 2:15 in the afternoon. She was wearing the same frayed cardigan. Her belly had grown noticeably in the 3 weeks since the divorce. She looked tired. She looked alone. She walked toward the staircase that led down to the street level, and that is where Vanessa intercepted her. Saria, Vanessa said, stepping into her path at the top of the stairs. What a coincidence. Soraya stopped. She looked at Vanessa with an expression that was impossible to read. Hello, Vanessa. I heard about the baby, Vanessa said, looking at Soraya's belly with an expression that was half pity and half disgust. Is it Liam's? Or did you branch out? It was designed to wound, and it did. But Soraya did not react. She simply said, Please move, I need to get to the subway. Of course, Vanessa said, stepping aside. But as Saria moved past her to descend the stairs, Vanessa's shoulder drove forward. It was not a bump. It was a strike. Targeted, precise, aimed directly at Soraya's side. Saria stumbled. Her feet slipped on the top step. She reached for the railing, but her hand closed on air. She fell. It was only 4 steps. But 4 steps is an eternity when you are 5.5 months pregnant and falling forward, and you cannot protect your belly because your arms are pinwheeling for balance. That does not come. Saria hit the landing hard. She landed on her side, her arm taking most of the impact, but her belly struck the edge of the bottom step. The pain was immediate and enormous, a deep, tearing ache that radiated through her entire body. Oh my God, Vanessa gasped, loud enough for the 2 witnesses on the sidewalk to hear. Soraya, are you okay? I am so sorry. I did not see you there. See you. Someone call 911, please. She fell. Soraya lay on the landing, both hands wrapped around her belly, her face white with pain and terror. Elise? She whispered. Elise, please. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. 7 minutes of Saria lying on cold concrete, feeling for movement inside her, praying to every force in the universe that her daughter was still alive. The EMTs loaded her onto a stretcher and rushed her to Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. In the emergency room, a doctor performed an ultrasound while Soraya gripped the sides of the bed so hard her knuckles went white. 6 seconds of silence. The doctor stared at the screen, the ultrasound wand pressed against Soraya's belly. The only sound in the room was the hum of the machine and Soraya's breathing, which was fast and shallow and terrified. Then a sound, a rapid, rhythmic sound, a heartbeat. The baby's heartbeat is strong, the doctor said. Soraya let out a breath that she felt like she had been holding for her entire life. But, the doctor continued, and that single word but was a knife that sliced through the relief like a blade through paper. There is a partial placental abruption. Part of the placenta has separated from the uterine wall. It is minor, but it is there. Mrs. Pembroke, you need complete bed rest for the next 2 weeks, minimum. No walking beyond the essentials, no stress, no physical exertion of any kind. If this abruption worsens, you could go into preterm labor. At 5.5 months, the baby's chances outside the womb are not good, Soraya nodded. She understood. She understood with every cell in her body. After the doctor left, Soraya lay in the hospital bed and stared at the ceiling. She was alone. There was no husband in the waiting room. There was no mother to call. There was no friend who knew who she really was. There was only Harrison Cole's number on her phone and the sound of her daughter's heartbeat still echoing in the room. She called Harrison. "Vanessa pushed me," Soraya said. Her voice was flat, controlled, but underneath it was a rage so deep it could have powered a city. On the stairs outside the medical building on Montague Street, she aimed for my belly. I fell. The doctor says partial placental abruption. Bed rest for 2 weeks. Harrison was quiet for 3 seconds. When he spoke, his voice was the voice of a man deciding exactly how much destruction to cause and when. "Was there a camera?" he asked. "The building has exterior security cameras. I saw them when I walked in. I will have the footage pulled within the hour," Harrison said. "Soraya, this changes the timeline. If Vanessa is willing to physically assault a pregnant woman, we need to consider accelerating." "No," Soraya said, her voice was iron. "We stay on plan. If I lose control now, I lose everything. The trust does not activate until Elise is born. If I reveal myself now to press charges against Vanessa, Liam will find out who I am. He will contest the divorce. He will claim fraud. The asset severance will be voided. He will get his hands on the Kensington portfolio. I am not giving him that. Not because he pushed me down the stairs." She paused. "Harrison," she said. "Yes. If I lose this baby, the trust stays locked. Liam's company survives. Vanessa wins." "Then we do not lose this baby," Harrison said. "I am not just protecting my inheritance, Harrison." Soraya's voice cracked for the first time. "I am protecting my daughter. This is not about money anymore. I do not care about the shipping lanes or the real estate or the bank. I care about Elise. I care that she is born safe and healthy and far away from these people. The money is just the weapon. She is the reason. We will get the footage. We will file it. We will hold it. And when the time is right, Vanessa Galt will answer for what she did today. I promise you that." Soraya hung up. She placed both hands on her belly and felt Elise kick. A strong kick. A defiant kick. As if the baby was saying, "I am still here, Mama." And Soraya, lying in a hospital bed in Brooklyn, bruised, alone, terrified, and more dangerous than anyone in New York City knew, said to her daughter, "I know you are, baby girl, and you are going to stay right where you are until you are ready. Your mama has got you. Nobody is going to take you from me. Not Vanessa, not Liam, not anyone." She closed her eyes. She did not sleep. She planned. News travels fast in the world of expensive suits and cheap morals. Within 48 hours of Soraya's fall, Vanessa knew the pregnancy had survived. She had her sources at the hospital, a billing clerk who owed her a favor. The baby was fine. Soraya was on bed rest. The situation was stable. Vanessa considered this a temporary setback, not a defeat. She sat in the living room of the Greenwich house, the house that technically belonged to a bank that technically belonged to Soraya, though nobody except Harrison Cole and Alfred knew that yet, and she thought about her next move. The direct approach had failed. She could not simply make the pregnancy disappear. She had underestimated the stubbornness of Soraya's body, or perhaps the stubbornness of Soraya's baby. Either way, the child was coming. Vanessa needed a different strategy. She needed Liam to take the baby. Not because Vanessa wanted a child. God, no. Children were messy, loud, and terrible for maintaining a size 2 figure. But if Liam had custody, he controlled the child. If he controlled the child, he controlled Soraya. And if he controlled Soraya, Vanessa controlled everyone. She found Liam at his college friend Brad's apartment in Hoboken, sitting at the kitchen table in a wrinkled shirt, surrounded by printouts of financial projections and empty coffee cups. "We need to talk about the baby," Vanessa said, sitting down across from him. "I do not want to talk about the baby," Liam muttered. "I do not want to think about the baby. That baby is the last thing I need right now. The IPO Road show starts in 3 weeks, and I cannot get a single bank to return my calls. I am sleeping on Brad's pull-out sofa. I had to borrow money from a guy I have not spoken to since college. My life is falling apart, and you want to talk about a baby?" "I want to talk about leverage," Vanessa said, and the word made Liam look up. Vanessa leaned forward. "Listen to me. On paper, what does Saria?" "Yes, nothing. $1,200 in a checking account. No job, no income, no permanent address. She is living in some apartment in Brooklyn that she probably cannot afford. She is pregnant, alone, and broke. What judge in America is going to give sole custody to a woman like that?" Liam blinked. "You want me to file for custody?" "I want you to file for emergency custody," Vanessa corrected. "Before the baby is even born. You go to the court, you present yourself as a concerned father. You argue that the mother is financially unstable, unemployed, and unable to provide adequate care for a child. You have a corner office on Wall Street. You have a name. You have a firm that is about to go public." "I lost my house," Liam pointed out. "Temporary setback due to an aggressive lender," Vanessa said smoothly. "Your lawyers can frame it that way. The point is, you are still the CEO of a major firm. She is nobody. File the motion, get emergency custody, and suddenly you have the strongest bargaining chip possible. If Soraya wants to see her own baby, she has to come through you. And if she has to come through you, she cannot cause you any problems with the IPO. She will be too busy begging." Liam stared at Vanessa for a long time, something in the back of his mind, some small surviving fragment of the man who had once been kind enough to leave a good tip for a waitress in a Brooklyn diner, whispered that this was wrong, that filing for custody of a child you did not want, from a woman you had already destroyed, for the sole purpose of using that child as a weapon, was something that went beyond business strategy and into something darker. But Liam had stopped listening to that part of himself a long time ago. He picked up his phone and called his lawyer. The custody papers were filed in family court in Connecticut on a Tuesday morning. Emergency motion for prenatal custody and postnatal guardianship. The filing argued that Saria Pembroke, unemployed, uninsured, and residing in an unfurnished apartment in Brooklyn, New York, was unable to provide a safe and stable environment for a minor child. The filing requested that upon birth, the child be placed in the temporary custody of the father, Liam Pembroke, CEO of Pembroke and Associates. Soraya received the papers at 4 in the afternoon, delivered by a process server, who knocked on the door of her Brooklyn apartment while she was lying on the mattress on the floor, following the doctor's orders for complete bed rest. She read the filing once, then she read it again, then she set it down on the cardboard box that served as her nightstand, and stared at the water stain on the ceiling of her apartment for a very long time. She had expected Liam to be cruel. She had expected Vanessa to be dangerous. She had prepared for financial warfare, legal maneuvering, and corporate sabotage. She had not prepared for this. He was trying to take her daughter, not because he wanted Elise, not because he loved her, not because he had any interest in being a father. He was trying to take Elise because she was useful, because a baby was leverage, because to Liam Pembroke, every person in the world, including his own unborn child, was either an asset or a liability, and he had decided that Elise was an asset he could exploit. Soraya picked up her phone and called Harrison. He filed for custody, she said. Her voice was calm in a way that Harrison had learned to recognize. It was the calm before a hurricane. I know, Harrison said. I got the notification 30 minutes ago. I have been reviewing the filing. He is arguing I am financially unstable, that I cannot provide for a child. On paper, he is right, Harrison said carefully. On paper, you have nothing. No income, no property, no significant savings. The court does not know about the Kensington Trust. They see what Liam sees. A broke, unemployed woman in a studio apartment. So we reveal the trust, Soraya said. We show the court who I really am. We end this today. There was a long pause. Then Harrison said, We can do that, but there are consequences. I know the consequences, Harrison. If you reveal the Kensington name now, Liam will immediately file a motion to vacate the divorce settlement. He will argue fraud. He will say, You deliberately concealed assets to gain an unfair advantage in the property division. The complete severance clause that he signed, the one that protects your fortune from his claims, that clause depends on both parties making a full and honest disclosure of assets. If the court finds that you hid $1 billion trust, they could void the entire agreement. Liam gets access to everything, not half, everything, because you deceived him. Soraya closed her eyes. This was the trap. This was the impossible geometry of her situation. She could save herself from the custody fight by revealing who she was, but revealing who she was could open the door for Liam to claim half her grandfather's empire. Or she could stay hidden, protect the trust, and risk losing her daughter to a man who saw her as nothing more than a bargaining chip. How long? Soraya asked. How long until the custody hearing? Liam filed for an emergency motion, Harrison said. The court will schedule a preliminary hearing within 3 to 4 weeks, maybe sooner. And how long until the baby? If the pregnancy goes to term, about 3.5 months. But the doctor said the abruption could cause early delivery. Could be sooner, and the trust activates at birth, then 30 days for probate confirmation. Correct. Soraya did the math. If Elise came on time, the trust would activate in 3.5 months, then 30 days for legal processing. That was nearly 5 months before she would have full control of the Kensington empire. The custody hearing was in 3 weeks. She was going to be exposed before she was armed, unless she played it differently. We delay, Soraya said. We do not reveal the trust. We do not fight the custody motion head-on. We let it proceed. We file for continuances. We request additional time for discovery. We bury them in paperwork. Every week we delay is a week closer to the delivery. And if the judge grants emergency custody before the baby is born, he will not. Not if we do this right. Harrison, I need you to find me the best family law attorney in Connecticut. Someone who can stall without looking like they are stalling. Someone who can make the court feel sorry for me without revealing anything about the Kensington Trust. On paper, I am exactly what Liam says I am, a broke pregnant woman with nothing. In most custody cases, that is a weakness. I need you to make it a strength. How? Because judges do not take babies away from their mothers, Harrison. Not unless there is evidence of abuse or neglect. Being poor is not a crime. Being unemployed is not grounds for removing an infant from its mother. Liam's motion is aggressive and arrogant, and it reeks of a man who thinks he can buy a judge. I need you to make sure the judge sees that. Harrison was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You are asking me to play the victim. I am not playing anything, Soraya said, her voice hardening. I am a pregnant woman whose ex-husband canceled her health insurance, threw her out of her home, and is now trying to take her baby. I am not playing the victim, Harrison. I am the victim. The fact that I also happen to be worth $12 billion does not change what he did to me. It just means I am going to survive it. I will make the calls tonight, Harrison said. We will drag this out as long as possible. But Saria, if anything goes wrong, if the judge looks like he is leaning toward Liam, I am revealing the trust. I am not letting them take your daughter. If it comes to that, Saria said, then we lose the asset protection. Liam gets access to the fortune. He wins. No, Harrison said firmly. He gets access to money. He does not win. There is a difference. Money can be earned back. Your daughter cannot. Saria felt tears for the first time since the divorce. Not tears of sadness. Tears of gratitude for having at least one person in her corner who understood what mattered. Thank you, Harrison, she whispered. Do not thank me. Thank your grandfather. He built this trust to protect you. And right now, you are protecting the one thing he cared about more than any fortune. Family. Saria hung up the phone. She lay back on the mattress and placed both hands on her belly. She could feel Elise moving, restless, as if the baby could sense her mother's distress. Listen to me, little girl, Saria whispered. I know this is scary. I know everything feels like it is closing in, but I need you to stay strong in there, okay? I need you to keep growing, keep kicking, keep fighting, because once you come into this world, everything changes. Once you are here, we do not have to hide anymore. Once you are here, I am going to give you the whole world. And the first thing I'm going to do is make sure the man who tried to take you from me never gets close enough to learn your name. She closed her eyes. Outside, the sound of Brooklyn traffic washed over the building like the sound of the ocean, relentless and indifferent and constant. Saria Kensington, the billionaire nobody knew, fell asleep with her hands on her belly and her back against the wall, in a bare apartment, on a mattress on the floor, in a building she probably already owned, through 3 layers of shell companies. She slept for 4 hours. It was the best sleep she had gotten in weeks. The last 3 months of Saria's pregnancy were a war of attrition fought on 2 fronts. On the legal front, Harrison Cole's hand-picked family attorney, a woman named Grace Whitfield, who had never lost a custody case and had no intention of starting now, filed motion after motion in Connecticut family court. Requests for continuance, demands for additional financial discovery on Liam's assets, subpoenas for records from Pembroke and associates related to the insurance cancellation. Each motion was technically legitimate, each bought another week, and each one drove Liam's attorney closer to a nervous breakdown. The judge, an older woman named Patricia Callahan, who had been on the bench for 20 years and had seen every variety of marital cruelty the state of Connecticut had to offer, was quietly sympathetic to Saria. She had read the filings. She had seen the insurance cancellation. She had noted that Liam's motion did not contain a single sentence about wanting to be a father. It was entirely about assets, strategy, and control. Judge Callahan had been doing this job long enough to know the difference between a father who wanted his child and a man who wanted a weapon. She granted every continuance Grace Whitfield requested. On the medical front, Saria followed the doctor's orders with the discipline of a general following a battle plan. Complete bed rest, no stress, prenatal vitamins, weekly monitoring at the private practice Harrison had arranged through Mount Sinai. The placental abruption stabilized but did not fully resolve. The doctor warned her that any significant stress event could trigger early labor. Saria spent those months in the Brooklyn apartment, reading, planning, and talking to Elise. She read to her daughter every night, pressing the book against her belly so the baby could feel the vibration of the words. She read children's books that she ordered online with Harrison's operational fund. She read business journals that she had Alfred deliver in unmarked envelopes. She read legal filings and corporate prospectuses and the financial news that tracked the slow, painful implosion of Pembroke and Associates IPO Roadshow. The IPO was dying. Without the Greenwich House, without a stable credit line, without a single major bank willing to underwrite the offering, Liam was running on fumes. He had cut the staff at Pembroke and Associates by 30%. He had moved the office from the 40th floor to the 22nd floor. He had sold his Porsche and was driving a leased Toyota. Vanessa was still by his side, but her eyes had developed that particular calculating distance that suggested she was constantly measuring the gap between the ship and the nearest lifeboat. Soraya watched all of this from her mattress in Brooklyn, and she waited. The baby came 3 weeks early. It was a Wednesday night in March. Soraya was asleep when she woke to a sensation that was not pain exactly, but a deep, powerful pressure, as if her entire body was being squeezed by a hand the size of the world. "Oh," she said to the empty room. "Oh, it is time," she called Harrison. He answered on the first ring, as he always did, as he had for 7 years. "The baby is coming," Saria said. 3 weeks early. "I am calling Mount Sinai," Harrison said. "I will have a car at your door in 8 minutes. The Geneva office is standing by. The moment the birth certificate is signed, we file the trust activation papers. The 30-day clock starts tonight." The car arrived in 6 minutes. Alfred was driving, of course. He carried Soraya down the 3 flights of stairs because the walk-up building had no elevator, and she was in too much pain to navigate the steps alone. He was gentle and strong, and he did not say a word beyond, "I have you, Miss Kensington. You are safe." The drive to Mount Sinai took 22 minutes. Soraya spent those minutes breathing through contractions that were coming faster than they should have been, gripping Alfred's hand from the back seat and thinking about her grandfather. Elias Kensington had built his fortune from a single steel mill in Pittsburgh. He had survived the Depression, 2 wars, and a hostile takeover attempt by a consortium of European competitors who underestimated him because he came from a small town. He had once told Saria, when she was 12 years old and sitting on his knee in the library of the Kensington estate, that the most powerful force in the world was not money, and it was not politics, and it was not military strength. It was a person who had nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. Saria arrived at the hospital at 11:47 p.m. She was admitted to a private suite on the maternity floor, a room that Harrison had reserved under a company name that could not be traced to Kensington. The OB-GYN, Dr. Catherine Walsh, examined her and confirmed that labor was progressing rapidly. Too rapidly. The baby's heart rate began to fluctuate at 1:30 in the morning. The steady rhythm that Saria had been listening to on the fetal monitor, the sound that had become the most important sound in her universe, began to stutter and dip. "Mrs. Pembroke," Dr. Walsh said, her voice carefully controlled, "the baby is in some distress. The placental abruption has worsened with labor. We need to discuss the possibility of an emergency cesarean section." "Do it," Saria said immediately. "Do whatever you need to do to get her out safely." The surgical team was assembled in 11 minutes. Saria was wheeled into the operating room where the lights were bright enough to bleach the fear from the air and the instruments were laid out with the precision of a military operation. She was given a spinal block. A blue curtain was raised across her midsection so she could not see what was happening below. She stared at the ceiling. She thought about the conference room on the 40th floor. She thought about Liam's face when he had told her she had no ambition. She thought about Vanessa's smile when she had said, "Take the money, you will need it for diapers." She thought about the bench in the rain. She thought about the stairs. She thought about her grandfather's words. A person who has nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. At 2:17 in the morning, Dr. Walsh reached inside and pulled Soraya's daughter into the world. For a moment that stretched like taffy, there was no sound. The surgical team was quiet. The monitors hummed. The air conditioner whispered. And then, like a siren announcing the arrival of something fierce and unstoppable, the baby screamed. It was the loudest, angriest, most beautiful sound Soraya had ever heard. "She is healthy," Dr. Walsh announced, and the relief in her voice was so thick you could almost see it in the air. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. She is small, but she is strong. She has excellent lung capacity, as you can hear. A nurse brought the baby to Saryab. She was wrapped in a white blanket, her face red and scrunched, her tiny fists clenched as if she had been born ready for a fight. Soraya held her daughter for the first time. She looked at the small face, at the dark hair, at the eyes that were squeezed shut against the brightness of a world that did not yet know how much she was about to change it. "Hello, Elise," Soraya whispered. Her voice broke. Tears ran down her face, and she did not wipe them away. "I am your mama, and I have been waiting for you for a very long time." In the waiting room, Harrison Cole stood up from his chair the moment a nurse came through the double doors. "Mother and baby are both healthy," the nurse said. "Born at 2:17 a.m. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. A girl." Harrison nodded once, a curt military nod, and pulled out his phone. He dialed the Geneva office. It was morning in Switzerland. "This is Harrison Cole," he said. "Authorization code, November Kilo, 77. The heir has been born. File the trust activation papers immediately. Start the 30-day clock." He hung up and sat back down. He allowed himself a small smile. Then he pulled out a second phone and texted Alfred, who was sitting in the hospital parking garage in the Bentley, reading a spy novel. "Elise Kensington has arrived. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. Healthy." Alfred texted back 2 words. "Very good." Then Alfred put down the phone, closed his book, and did something he had not done in many years. He cried, not for long, not dramatically, just a few quiet tears for the baby girl who had just inherited the weight of a dynasty and the love of a mother who would burn the world down to keep her safe. Back in the recovery room, Soraya held Elise against her chest. The baby had stopped crying. She was sleeping, her tiny hand resting on Soraya's collarbone, her breathing slow and steady. Soraya looked down at her daughter and whispered, "You just unlocked $1 billion, sweetheart. But that is not your superpower. Your superpower is that you taught your mama what is worth fighting for." The 30-day clock had started. In 1 month, Saria Kensington would have full legal control of the entire Kensington Group. Every shipping line, every real estate holding, every bank, including Blackwood Capital. In 1 month, she would have the power to dismantle Liam Pembroke's entire world with a single phone call. But right now, in this moment, she was just a mother holding her baby, and that was enough. 31 days after Elise Kensington was born, Harrison Cole called Saria at 7 in the morning. "The trust cleared probate confirmation at midnight Geneva time," he said. "As of this moment, you are the sole controlling principal of the Kensington Group. Total portfolio value, as of last quarter's audit, is $11.8 billion. You have full authority over all subsidiaries, including Blackwood Capital, Kensington Shipping, Atlantic Ridge, Real Estate, and the Kensington Foundation. The board in Geneva has been notified. They are awaiting your first directive." Soraya was sitting in a rocking chair in her Brooklyn apartment, feeding Elise from a bottle. The apartment had improved somewhat over the past month. Harrison had arranged for basic furniture to be delivered. There was a crib now, and a changing table, and a small kitchen table where Soraya ate her meals. It was still modest, still plain, still the home of a woman who appeared to have nothing. But appearances, as we have established, are the most expensive lies in the world. My first directive, Soraya said, looking down at Elise, who was gripping the bottle with both hands and drinking with the intensity of a person who had important things to do, is to attend the Global Economic Summit in Zurich next week. Liam will be there. He has been begging every banker in America for IPO funding, and they have all turned him down. Zurich is his last shot. He is going to walk into that ballroom looking for a savior. And he is going to find you instead, Harrison said. He is going to find Soraya Kensington for the first time. The Global Economic Summit was held annually at the Grand Hotel in Zurich, a building that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought Versailles was a bit too understated. The ballroom was a cathedral of marble and gold leaf, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of thick carpet that absorbs the sound of billion-dollar deals being made over cocktails. Liam Pembroke arrived at the summit looking like a man who had been through a car wash without a car. He had borrowed money from his college friend, Brad, to buy the plane tickets, economy class. He had packed his last good suit, the one he had been saving for the IPO launch party that was never going to happen. Vanessa was with him, of course, though she had been notably colder in recent weeks. She had started checking her phone more often, spending more time on LinkedIn, updating her resume with a casual indifference that Liam found unsettling. They stood in the ballroom, two people drowning in a sea of wealth, holding glasses of champagne they could barely afford. There, Liam whispered, nodding toward a cluster of men in the corner. That is Archibald Thorne, CEO of Chimera Banking. If I can get 5 minutes with him, I can pitch the IPO. One signature, and we are saved. Liam straightened his tie, squared his shoulders, and approached Thorne with the kind of desperate confidence that rich people can smell the way sharks smell blood. Mr. Thorne, Liam said, extending his hand. Liam Pembroke. Pembroke and Associates. Wonderful to see you again. Archibald Thorne was in his 70s, with a full head of silver hair and eyes that had been evaluating risk since before Liam was born. He looked at Liam the way a jeweler looks at cubic zirconia. Pembroke, Thorne said. I heard you had some housing troubles in New York. Something about a foreclosure? A misunderstanding with a predatory lender, Liam said, the rehearsed response coming out too fast. My lawyers are handling it. It is actually an advantage. It shows we are lean and ready for the public market. Thorne was not convinced. His eyes drifted away from Liam, scanning the room for someone more worthy of his attention. Risk management is a key indicator of leadership, Mr. Pembroke. Losing one's home suggests a lack of foresight. Before Liam could respond, the room changed. It did not change gradually. It changed the way the sky changes when an eclipse starts. A sudden, unmistakable shift in the quality of the light. Conversations faltered, heads turned, the ambient noise of clinking glasses and polite laughter faded to a hush that spread across the ballroom like a wave. The double doors at the top of the grand staircase had opened. A woman stood there. She was wearing a gestions of midnight blue velvet that moved around her body like a living thing. The neckline was bold, and at her throat hung a necklace of sapphires and diamonds that caught the chandelier light and threw it back in blue fire. Her hair, dark and lustrous, fell in structured waves around her shoulders. Her makeup was flawless, sharp, and deliberate. She looked like a weapon that had been designed by an artist. She was flanked by two men. On her left was Harrison Cole, 6 feet 3 inches of legal devastation in a black tuxedo. On her right was a man Liam did not recognize but several people in the room did. The current finance minister of Switzerland, who was laughing at something the woman had said, as if she had just told the funniest joke in the history of European banking. Liam's champagne glass slipped from his fingers. It hit the marble floor and shattered. Champagne, Saipouhon splashed across his shoes. But nobody looked at him. Every eye in the room was on the staircase, because the woman standing there was Saria. But it was not the Sariam who clipped coupons. It was not the Saraya who wore a frayed cardigan and signed divorce papers with a cheap ballpoint pen. This woman radiated a frequency of power that made the billionaires in the room look like extras in her movie. "Who is that?" Vanessa whispered. Her voice was barely audible over the sound of her own world collapsing. "It cannot be," Liam stammered. "She is in Queens. She has no money. She has nothing." Soraya descended the staircase. She did not walk down those stairs. She conducted them, each step measured and purposeful, like a conductor bringing an orchestra to the opening note. When she reached the bottom, the crowd parted for her with the instinctive deference that human beings show in the presence of someone who could buy and sell everyone in the room without pausing their conversation. Archibald Thorne, the same man who had just looked at Liam with barely concealed disdain, stepped forward immediately. He did not extend his hand. He bowed his head. "Miss Kensington," Thorne said, and his voice was full of the kind of respect that money alone cannot buy. "We were not sure you would be attending this year. I had some loose ends to tie up in New York, Archibald," Soraya said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, and it carried effortlessly across the silent ballroom. "But the Kensington Group is looking to expand its European portfolio. I thought this was a good time to reconnect." Kensington Group. The words hit Liam like a freight train. The Kensington Group was not a myth, but it might as well have been. It was the most private, most powerful, most quietly terrifying conglomerate in the Western Hemisphere. It owned shipping lines that carried 40% of Pacific trade. It owned real estate on 5 continents. It owned banks that other banks borrowed from. And it owned, as Liam was suddenly, horrifyingly beginning to realize, Blackwood Capital. Liam pushed past a waiter and stumbled toward her. His face was white. His hands were shaking. The champagne stain on his shoes glistened under the chandelier light like a badge of his own destruction. "Soraya," he croaked. She stopped. She turned slowly. Her eyes landed on him, and in that gaze, there was no warmth, no anger, no sadness, no revenge. There was only a polite, distant curiosity, the kind of look a person gives a street sign they have already driven past. "Liam," she said, "I see you made it. How was the flight? Coach can be so cramped." The room was watching. Every billionaire, every CEO, every finance minister, and venture capitalist, and hedge fund titan in that ballroom had stopped their conversations to witness this moment. They did not know the full story yet, but they could smell it. They could feel it. Something extraordinary was happening. "You are the Kensington Group," Liam gasped. His voice was too loud. It bounced off the marble walls. "You own Blackwood Capital?" "I own the parent company, yes," Soraya said, taking a sip of water from a glass that a waiter had materialized to place in her hand. "Along with the shipping division, the real estate portfolio, the foundation, and a few other interests. It has been in my family for 3 generations. You foreclosed on me," Liam shouted, and now his voice was cracking. "You took my house. You ruined me. You are my wife." "Ex-wife," Soraya corrected. The word was sharp enough to cut glass. "And I did not ruin you, Liam. You signed the papers. Complete severance of assets. You wanted to make sure I could not touch your money. I simply made sure you could not touch mine." "This is fraud," Vanessa shrieked, pushing forward. She was trembling with rage and fear in equal measure. You pretended to be poor. You tricked him into signing away his rights. Saria looked at Vanessa. She looked at her, the way a queen looks at a peasant who has wandered into the throne room by accident. I did not pretend anything, Vanessa. I lived simply because I valued people over possessions. I wanted to see if Liam loved me, or if he loved what I could give him. I got my answer 7 years ago, the first time he told me I had no ambition because I chose to stay home and build a life instead of a portfolio. I just waited for him to make the first move. She stepped closer to Liam, close enough that only he could hear her next words. But the room was so quiet that even the chandeliers seemed to be listening. You called me a liability, Liam. You said I had no ambition. You told me to go back to waiting tables. But while you were playing CEO in your little glass office, I was restructuring the shipping lanes of the Pacific. While you were borrowing money from a bank you did not know I owned, I was approving $4 billion acquisitions before breakfast. You are not a shark, Liam. You are bait. She stepped back and addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, and her voice rang like a bell in the silent ballroom. The Kensington Group will be announcing the acquisition of Pembroke and Associates tomorrow morning. We have already acquired the controlling debt. The firm will be restructured and its assets redistributed to more capable management. She looked back at Liam one last time. It is just business, Liam. You understand power, do you not? Then she turned and walked into the crowd of billionaires who closed around her like the sea closing over a stone. Liam stood alone in the broken glass. His suit was stained, his hands were shaking. His mouth was open, but no words came out. Beside him, Vanessa was already backing away. Her eyes were scanning the room with the rapid, calculating movement of a woman searching for a new host. She was evaluating the other men in the ballroom, measuring their net worth by the cut of their tuxedos and the weight of their watches. Liam, she said, and her voice was already detaching, the way a climber detaches from a rope that is about to snap. I think we need to talk about our future. Liam did not hear her. He was staring at the place where Saria had stood, the space she had occupied, the air she had breathed. And he was realizing, with a sickness that started in his stomach and spread to every cell in his body, that he had not just signed a divorce paper in that conference room on the 40th floor. He had signed his own death warrant Monday morning, Wall Street. The opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange rang at 9:30, but at the headquarters of Pembroke and Associates, the bell had already tolled. Liam had taken a red-eye flight from Zurich. Economy again. He had not slept. The scene in the ballroom played on a loop in his head. A highlight reel of his own humiliation. He kept seeing Saria's face. Not the angry face he would have expected. Not tears, not rage. Just that polite, distant look. The look of a woman who had already moved on from him so completely that his destruction was merely an item on her calendar. He arrived at the building at 8:45 in the morning. He walked through the lobby with what was left of his composure, which was not much. His shirt was wrinkled. His tie was crooked. He had not shaved. He swiped his security badge at the turnstile. The light flashed red. Access denied. Liam swiped again. Red light. Again, red light. He looked at Jerry, the security guard who had manned this desk for 5 years. Liam had never learned Jerry's last name. He had never asked how Jerry's kids were doing. He had never said thank you when Jerry held the door for him on rainy mornings. Jerry was furniture to Liam, a piece of the building that happened to be alive. "Hey, Jerry," Liam said, "fix this." "My card is demagnetized or something." Jerry did not look up from his monitor. "Card is fine, Mr. Pembroke. Your clearance has been revoked." "Revoked? By who?" "I am the CEO." "Not as of 8 a.m. this morning," said a voice from the elevator bank. Liam turned. Harrison Cole stepped out of the elevator, flanked by 3 attorneys in matching charcoal suits. They looked like a legal firing squad. "Mr. Cole," Liam said, and his voice was a mixture of rage and terror that made it sound like he was being strangled. "You cannot lock me out of my own building. I founded this firm, and you leveraged it to the hilt," Harrison replied. He was holding a thick envelope, which he handed to Liam with the casual precision of a man who had done this 1,000 times. "You missed your margin call on the Blackwood loan, but more importantly, the Kensington Group exercised its rights under the debt agreement to convert the outstanding principal into equity. In plain English, Liam, he borrowed money from his own wife. Now she owns his company. As of this morning, the Kensington Group holds 51% of Pembroke and Associates." Liam ripped open the envelope. His eyes scanned the document. Legal language blurred in front of him. Terms, clauses, percentages. But the numbers were clear. The Kensington Group had converted every dollar of the Blackwood loan into ownership shares. They had not asked permission. They had not needed permission. It was all in the contract that Liam had signed without reading. Page 42, the Swift Action Default Clause. "I will fight this," Liam said. His voice was a rasp. "I have the board on my side. They will not let this happen." "The board," Harrison said, with a small smile that was worse than any shout, "met via emergency session this morning at 7 a.m. They voted unanimously to accept the Kensington acquisition offer. They are receiving a very generous exit package. You, however, are being terminated for cause." "Cause? What cause?" Harrison produced a second document. "Gross mismanagement of corporate funds, reckless borrowing against company assets, conduct unbecoming of a chief executive officer. The video of your outburst in Zurich went viral overnight. Liam, it has 4 million views. Investors do not invest in men who scream at their ex-wives in ballrooms." Liam felt the marble floor tilting beneath his feet. Everything was spinning. The fountain in the lobby, the brass letters of his name on the wall, the security desk where Jerry sat watching with an expression of carefully neutral satisfaction. It was all sliding away from him like scenery in a dream. "Where is she?" Liam whispered. "Miss Kensington is in the penthouse office," Harrison said. "She is conducting her first meeting as chairwoman. She anticipated you might want a conversation. She has granted you 5 minutes." Harrison signaled to Jerry, who buzzed the turnstile open. Liam walked through it, like a man walking through the gates of a cemetery where he was about to be buried. He rode the elevator to the 40th floor, the same hallway, the same glass doors. But everything had changed. His loyal associates were gone. The desks were occupied by auditors in gray suits who were boxing up files and cataloging hard drives. His awards had been taken down from the walls. His name had been removed from the door of the corner office. He pushed open the door. Soraya was sitting in his chair, behind his desk, in his office. She was wearing a white suit that made her look like something between an angel and an executioner. She was on the phone, speaking fluent French with the ease of someone conducting a conversation about the weather. Except the weather she was discussing involved the redistribution of $600 million in European shipping contracts. She saw Liam. She held up one finger. "Wait." Liam waited. He stood in his own office like a visitor, like a stranger, like the janitor who would one day be cleaning this floor, though he did not know that yet. Soraya finished the call and set the phone down. She looked at Liam. "You are late," she said. "I expected you 10 minutes ago." "You planned this," Liam said. His voice was shaking. "From the beginning. The loan, the divorce, the foreclosure. You set me up." Soraya stood up and walked to the window. The Manhattan skyline stretched before her the same view Liam had stared at for years and seen only numbers. Soraya looked at it and saw something else entirely. I did not set you up, Liam. I gave you a rope. You are the one who tied the noose. Why? Liam asked. Tears of frustration burned in his eyes. We were married. I loved you. Soraya turned from the window. Her expression hardened into something that was beyond anger, beyond disappointment. It was the look of a woman who had grieved the death of a love that never existed. Did you love me, Liam? Or did you love that I was quiet? That I cooked your meals and washed your clothes and raised no objections while you took my CFO to hotels on the company credit card? She paused. I own the phone company you use, Liam. The carrier. The infrastructure. I have the transcripts of every text you sent Vanessa, every late-night call, every message where you called me a burden, where you said the pregnancy was a trap, where she told you I was a peasant and you laughed. Liam's face went white. I read them all, Soraya said. Every single one. The office door opened. Vanessa walked in, but she was not walking in as Liam's ally. She was carrying a banker's box filled with file folders, and she placed it on Soraya's desk with the careful obedience of a person who had recently been shown exactly how small she was. I have the files you asked for, Miss Kensington, Vanessa said. Her voice was flat, stripped of all its former sharpness. The offshore accounts Liam set up to hide the kickbacks from the pension fund. The shell companies he used to embezzle client money. It is all documented. Dates, amounts, routing numbers. Liam stared at Vanessa. The betrayal was so complete, it was almost artistic. Vanessa, he said, what are you doing? Vanessa did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Soraya, the way a person keeps their eyes on the person who holds their fate. Soraya took the files. Thank you, Vanessa. Your cooperation has been noted. The district attorney will be informed that you served as a whistleblower. It will be considered during sentencing. Sentencing? Liam's voice was barely a whisper. For the embezzlement, Soraya said, and the securities fraud, and the pension fund manipulation. Vanessa documented everything. She traded the evidence for immunity. She will not be going to prison. You, however, will. Liam looked at Vanessa with an expression that contained every emotion a human face can hold simultaneously. Rage, betrayal, disbelief, and underneath all of it, the pathetic, childish shock of a man who genuinely believed the woman he cheated with would be loyal to him. You traitor, he said. Vanessa finally looked at him. Her eyes were cold and empty, like windows in a house where nobody lives anymore. You are broke, Liam, and you are going to prison. I am not going down with you. Miss Kensington offered me a way out. I took it. That is what you taught me, Liam. Always take the deal that benefits you. You just never imagined someone would use your own lesson against you. Get out, Soraya said to Vanessa, her voice carrying no gratitude and no warmth. Vanessa scurried out of the office without a backward glance. She walked past the auditors, past the empty desks, past the wall where Liam's name used to hang in brass letters, and she disappeared into the elevator. It was the last time Liam Pembroke ever saw her. Soraya reached into a desk drawer and produced a single sheet of paper. She slid it across the desk to Liam. Your severance package, she said, consistent with the company handbook that you wrote. 2 weeks' pay, calculated at your base salary, which is not much because you were paying yourself mostly in stock options that are now worthless. And we will validate your parking for today. Liam looked at the paper. He looked at the number. He looked up at the woman he had called a waitress, a nobody, a burden, a liability. The custody case, Soraya said, leaning forward. Your lawyer called my lawyer this morning. He withdrew the motion. It seems that once the Kensington name became public, Your legal team realized that no judge in America would award custody of an infant to a man facing federal indictment when the alternative is a woman worth $12 billion. Your parental rights will be terminated in the final decree. You will have no contact with my daughter. That is not a negotiation. That is a fact. Liam sat in the chair. The same chair Saria had sat in a few months ago, on the other side of this same desk, when he had told her she was nothing. The irony was perfect. It was almost poetic. Your 5 minutes are up, Saria said. She checked her watch, a Patek Philippe, the same brand as the one Liam used to wear, but considerably more expensive. The FBI is waiting in the lobby, Liam. I would suggest you do not keep them waiting. They are not as patient as I was. Liam stood up. He walked to the door. He turned around one last time. Was any of it real? He asked. His voice was the voice of a man who has just realized that he has been living in a house with no foundation. The diner, the wedding, the 7 years. Was any of it real? Saria looked at him for a long moment, and for just 1 second, something flickered behind her eyes. Not love, not forgiveness, something older, something that might have been grief, the grief of a woman mourning a love that she had once believed in with her whole heart. The pancakes were real, Liam, she said softly. The coffee was real. The way I felt when you smiled at me across that counter was real. But you stopped being real a long time ago, and I could not keep pretending for both of us. Liam nodded. He walked out of the office. He rode the elevator down to the lobby. He was met by 2 agents in dark suits who showed him their badges and read him his rights in voices that were polite, professional, and utterly devoid of sympathy. The last thing Liam Pembroke saw as he was escorted through the lobby of the building that bore his name was Jerry, the security guard. Jerry was watching him go, and on Jerry's face was not satisfaction, not pity, not anger. Jerry nodded at Liam once, a small, almost imperceptible nod. The kind of nod that says, I saw you every day for 5 years. You never once said good morning. And now I am watching you leave in handcuffs. This is not justice. This is math. You get back what you put in. Liam looked away. The glass doors closed behind him. 3 years passed. The Federal Correctional Institution at Otisville sits on a hill in Orange County, New York, surrounded by green fields and razor wire. It is known in legal circles as a white-collar resort, the kind of prison where former CEOs and hedge fund managers serve their time in relative comfort, with access to tennis courts and salad bars and the persistent delusion that their experience is somehow different from real incarceration. But prison is prison. The doors lock at the same time every night. The food tastes like punishment regardless of the menu. And the silence that comes after lights out is the same silence whether you are sleeping on a cot in a minimum security dormitory or a bunk in a maximum security cell. It is the silence of a life that has been paused and the growing fear that nobody is going to press play again. Liam Pembroke sat in the cafeteria at a metal table, staring at a tray of food he was not going to eat. He was 51 years old. His hair had gone completely gray and was thinning in a way that no amount of money could have fixed, though money was no longer a relevant concept in his life. The arrogance that had once defined his face like a mask had been replaced by something flatter and emptier, the expression of a man who has stopped expecting things to get better. He had been sentenced to 5 years, securities fraud, embezzlement, pension fund manipulation. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. Vanessa had testified against him on the second day, sitting in the witness box in a conservative blue dress, looking nothing like the woman who had once worn Versace to divorce meetings. She had answered every question clearly, precisely, and without a single glance in Liam's direction. When the prosecutor asked her